Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar to discuss the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. My name is Cody Cox, and I'm here with the Missouri Small Business Development Center at Missouri State University. I am a regional small business consultant with our organization, along with Sandra Smart and Lance Kaufman, who will be presenting today. I appreciate everyone taking the time to join us and want to thank the Branson Chamber of Commerce as well as the Taney County Partnership for helping us to make this webinar possible. Before we get started, I would also like to welcome Michael Barrera, the new District Director of the U.S. Small Business Administration's Kansas City District Office. Accompanying him is Ron Bassnett, who is with our SBA Springfield branch office. Some of you may know him from previous webinars. We appreciate you both being on the call, and we're going to have Michael kick us off with a few short words, followed by just a few short words from Grant Sloan with the Branson Chamber of Commerce, and then we will get into the presentation. So Michael, you want to say a few things and we'll get it moving? We can't hear you, Michael. Doesn't show you're muted though. Well, it looks like Michael may be having some technical difficulties, so we may circle back around to him. Ron, did you want to add anything quickly before we get to Grant?
Sure. I was just going to say a few remarks on behalf of Michael. It seems like he's having some technical difficulties. Well, first of all, I would like to thank the SBDC and all the team members for putting this event together, and we greatly appreciate the invitation as well. And I know there is a wealth of information you guys are presenting today, so I'm not going to take any more time. We have a very strong SBDC network here in Southwest Missouri, and if you have any questions with regards to this program, we strongly encourage all the participants to reach out to the SBDCs. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Ron. We appreciate your partnership as well. And Grant, would you like to say a few brief words about the Chamber of Commerce, and we'll get things moving?
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like an award ceremony with everybody thanking everybody, but you know, big shout out to the SBDC, SBA, Missouri State for approaching us with this opportunity. You know, these are two industry sectors that I will say probably don't intersect all that much. Absolutely very happy that this is happening today in regards to the SVOG, but I just would like to say to everybody on the call, you know, SBDC, SBA, great resources outside of something like CARES Act relief dollars. And just want to say that this is something, a connection that I look forward to seeing grow over the future. I know Jonas has really brought me up to speed with some of the services that you offer, and I think really an ongoing partnership that we want to foster. So with that, I do know that everyone's time is valuable, and so love to get things underway.
Great. Thanks, Grant. And I'll just do a quick blurb on just a few quick Zoom meeting tips before we get started. Please do be sure to change your Zoom screen name to your first and last name, or at minimum your first initial and then your last name. This really helps us know who attended so that we can follow up appropriately. We'll be taking questions throughout the presentation if you want to type them in the chat box, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. We hope to have some time for some verbal Q&A at the end. If you have technical difficulty, also type that in the chat box and we will do our best to assist you there. We are recording this session and we'll send out a follow-up email with additional information to everybody that registered. And also there will be a survey after this session in an email. So please do be watching for that. And we would love for you to provide us feedback to help us develop our future programs. And once again, as Grant said, you can also follow up with our team here at the Missouri SBDC at Missouri State University for additional assistance and questions. And I just want to remind everyone that we are here to support you in your business now and after this disaster. The Missouri SBDC provides assistance to business owners at every stage, providing confidential one-on-one consulting at no fee to our clients and training programs on a variety of topics. So we continue to support you through the pandemic, and we encourage you to visit our website, schedule a meeting, and learn how we can assist you with the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant and beyond. So Lance, you want to take it from here?
I will. Thank you, Cody.
Thank you.
All right. So to get started, I'll just do a brief overview of the SVOG, and we have a lot of content that we're going to cover. I'll go through pretty quickly, trying to make sure we have time for questions at the end. But like Cody said, please type those in the chat and we will get to as many as possible. All of this information that we are presenting today is available on the SBA website through the frequently asked questions page and through the webinar that they presented nationally on the 30th. And so I do encourage you to go to svoggrantportal.sba.gov, and we'll send a link and a follow-up so that you can go directly there. But you can view the full webinar that we are pulling this information from. So to get started, the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant is a grant program offered through the SBA Office of Disaster Relief. It is for live venue operators, promoters, theatrical producers, live performing arts organizations, museum operators, zoos, aquariums, motion picture theaters, and talent representatives. Applications do open this week on April 8th, and award amounts are up to 45% of your 2019 gross revenue, capped at $10 million. Additionally, $2 billion of this program has been set aside for smaller businesses with no more than 50 employees. And before, I know there was a lot of concern from the clients that I've spoken with about the interaction of PPP and the SVOG. Now, under the current rules, any PPP loan received after December 27th will be deducted from your eligible amount of SVOG, but you are eligible for both programs, just not a combination of funds from both. So the cap is still the same for SVOG. So grants are awarded in 3 priority groups. The first priority goes to applicants who can show a 90% or greater reduction in total revenue from 2019 to 2020. That's the first 14 days of awards. The next 14 days are those businesses with a 70% or greater reduction in revenue. And then the third priority is those with 25% or greater loss from 2019 to 2020. I've already mentioned, but the eligible businesses under this grant program are live venue operators, promoters, theatrical producers, live performing arts organizations, museum operators, zoos, aquariums who meet the specific criteria that you can find in the frequently asked questions, motion picture theaters, and talent representatives. So eligibility is based off of those industries, and that has to be your principal business activity, meaning that the majority of your revenue comes from one of those types of operations. This also means that restaurants with live music, wedding venues, and other entities who may offer live performances, but whose primary revenue is from other sources, are likely not covered in this program. Businesses must have been in operation as of February 29th, 2020, and you must be able to show documentation supporting your eligibility. So who is not eligible? First of all, businesses starting after February 29th of 2020, businesses located outside of the US, publicly traded corporations, businesses with performance of a prurient sexual nature, businesses with more than 10% of 2019 income coming from federal sources, and this does not count any disaster assistance, and then businesses operating in more than one country and in more than 10 states and with more than 500 employees as of February 29th, 2020. So prior to applying, here's a few things that you really need to get going with. If you are not already, register in the System for Award Management. We have a recorded webinar on our website covering the registration process. It's in our webinar library. So if you have not already, please start that process right away. It does take a few days. For the same registration, you need a DUNS number and a tax ID. And like I said, the webinar that we have recorded will cover that full process for setting up and registering in the SAMS program. Then encourage you to go to svoggrantportal.sba.gov and sign up for updates. That way you will be notified as soon as the application's open. Review the application checklist that is on the SBA website. It goes through the full list of documentation that you need to have ready and prepared in order to go through the application. And make sure you read the frequently asked questions. There is a great deal of information, a lot of situational questions, and so I encourage you to read those. And from my understanding on the webinar last week, there is going to be a few additions coming out possibly before the 8th with a little bit more clarification on the frequently asked questions. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the SBA on the 30th nationally offered an informational webinar. I encourage you to go watch the webinar. That is what our content is based on. So applications, they are going to be accepted on a rolling basis, and applications will be reviewed in the order based on the time of receipt. As we mentioned before, the grants are awarded based off of those priority stages. And then the grants will continue to be awarded until all funds have been extinguished. The application process starts with creating an account in the portal. You will enter all of the required information in the applicable fields, and please refer to the checklist on the SBA website to know what information you need. All of the documentation that will need to be uploaded can be uploaded in PDF, JPEG, Excel, or Word doc formats. So if you have some other formats, if you have GIF, PNG, some other type of image format, make sure you get everything to the proper format so that you are ready to apply. And then the application will save throughout the process. So you can go back if you need to pull some more information. If you missed a piece, you can go back and pick up where you left off in the application process. And then you will get a notification that your application was submitted. So SBA will not have received your application unless you get that notification that it has been submitted. And once the portal opens, SBA staff will not be permitted to provide assistance on the application process. You can still reach out to us here at the Small Business Development Center. You could reach out to the Women Business Centers. You could reach out to SCORE. There are a number of other agencies that are funded and sponsored by the SBA that we are all more than happy to help throughout the process. So the documents that you need, first you'll start with a written certification of need. This does not have to be a big, long document. It is really a brief statement, and we'll talk a little bit more about what it includes in a minute. You'll need your corporate document showing where you formed the business, any LLC filings. You'll need, if you're running under a DBA, you'll need that documentation as well. You'll need a government issued ID, both front and the back. You'll need a list of all the employees, their status, their job titles, both for full and part-time as of February 29th. And then if you are not a nonprofit who is applying for this program, you will also need your tax exempt documentation. For financial documents, you'll need your 2019 tax return, and you will need to upload a copy of that in the portal at the time of application. If you have already filed your 2020, then you will need to upload that as well. If not, then you can include that at a later date as soon as it is filed. You'll also need the 4506T form, which is a request for your transcript of tax returns so that the SBA can directly reach out to the IRS and pull your tax statements. You'll need quarterly income statements signed by a primary officer of the organization for both 2019 and 2020. And you will need payroll statements covering February 29th, 2020 to confirm the employee list that you've compiled previously. Then if applicable, you will also need your most recent audited financial statements or a single audit. There's also some additional documents you'll need to download, sign, and be prepared to upload. These are going to be just different assurances, drug-free workplace, that assurance that you are not working with any lobbying organization or involved in lobbying. So those are listed on the checklist. Make sure you download those, sign, and be prepared to upload those documents. Then if you look at the checklist, there are also some specific documents based off of the type of application. So make sure you review those. If you have any questions on which ones apply to you, feel free to reach out to us. We are happy to help guide you to the correct documentation. You'll also see those, what's needed when you're going through the application process. And again, there are tons of details in the frequently asked questions and on that checklist that are on the SVOG website. So let's go back to that certification of need that I mentioned. Again, this is going to be a very brief document saying that based off of the economic situation, that you need this grant to support your ongoing operations. You must state that you will remain in operation after receipt of funds. And if you're shuttered, then you need to include your intent and reopening dates. And here's just a quick example of what that might look like. Due to the uncertainty of current economic conditions, the SVOG is necessary to support ongoing operations of Greater Ozark Music Company, LLC. GOMC opened its doors April 20th, 2005, and is currently shuttered, but intends to reopen April 20th, 2021. So it can be a very brief, simple statement of need. Doesn't have to be a huge, long document. So don't overthink it. Just put in the basics. As you go through the application, towards the end, you will be given a proposed award amount based off of the financial information that you entered. It will appear as proposed award. This is not necessarily the amount that you will get, and you don't have to take the full amount that you are offered. But this is based off of your initial documentation, what you could be eligible for. From this, you will create a proposed budget on how you will use all of these funds. So the proposed budget, it's going to determine how you intend to use the funds. There will be a list of expenditures that are acceptable uses of the grant funds, and you will put in, I intend to use $5,000 on rent in this period. I intend to use $10,000 on payroll in this period. And the budget that you put together cannot exceed the proposed amount, and it can only include those expenditures that are listed as eligible items. If you did receive a PPP after December 27th of 2020, then your proposed budget will be reduced by the amount of that PPP. As I said before, the application is not submitted to the SBA until you see that application status submitted. You will also see status notification changes. You have to log into the system to review what those changes are. You will get an email just saying that your status has changed. So you have to log into the system to see what those changes will be. Submitted is the first one. On hold, do not pay list. That means that there is some sort of problem with your account, possibly that you have been on government contract and that contract didn't go well, you're put on a do not pay list. If that happens, you'll have 30 days to clear that hold in order for the application to be processed. Otherwise, it will be declined. This is probably not a very likely circumstance for most people on this call, but if it happens, please reach out. We are happy to assist you. After that, your application will go into a final review. There may be some additional questions, additional documentation, and from that final review, you will see either approved or declined. It is very important that you have all of the pieces of the application complete, that you state your case well, because if the applications are declined at this time, there is no review process for you to go back. So make sure that everything is put together the way that you want to be represented. So if you're approved, you'll get a notice of award. This provides all of the general information about the grant. It talks about the terms and conditions. We'll go back to your proposed budget, and you will need to stick pretty closely to this proposed budget. There is a little bit of room, if you spend, $4,700 instead of $5,000 on rent, then there is a little bit of room like that. The SBA on the call last week said 10% in any category, but you want this to be as close as possible, because this proposed budget is what you are signing to on this notice of award. And then there could be special conditions. For example, some disbursements will go out all at once and you'll receive all your funds at once. Others may get it in 2, 3, or 4 different disbursements of varying amounts. This depends on the total amount that you are seeking, and it also depends a little bit on your perceived risk in the application process. The SBA does explain that perceived risk a little bit well if you look at the Federal Register, but we're happy to answer questions on that as well. And you will, again, have to submit your 2020 taxes as soon as those are filed. And there could be other conditions based off of your information. This must be signed and uploaded back to the applicant system in order for you to receive your funds. With that, there will also be program-specific assurances. Those you will have to make the certifications and initial by each one, sign and upload again. And any misrepresentation initiated may lead to a False Claims Act action or other legal actions. So don't certify to things that are not true. And again, this will be uploaded at the same time as your notice of award. So what are the allowable uses of funds? First, payroll costs. You can use it for rent payments. You can use it for utility payments, scheduled mortgage payments, but you cannot prepay any mortgage. You can use it for other scheduled debt. You can use it for worker protection. You can use it for payment to independent contractors. That amount cannot exceed $100,000 in annual compensation per contractor. You can also use the funds for other ordinary and necessary business expenses. Maintenance costs is one example of that. You can use it for administrative costs, state and local taxes and fees, not federal taxes. You can use it for operating leases in effect February 15th, 2020. Use it to pay insurance. Use it for advertising, production, transportation, and other capital expenditures. You cannot use the funds to purchase real estate, make any payments on loans that originated after February 15th of 2020. You cannot use the funds to make any investments or make any loans. And you cannot make any contributions to political parties, political campaigns, or candidates for election. And then there are other uses that are prohibited, and that will be in your terms before you sign and receive your funds. You will have 1 year from the date of award to expend all of the grant funds. The funds can only be used for the allowable purposes for costs between March 1st of 2020 and December 31st of this year, 2021. So if you receive this grant, you are responsible for administering all of the funds efficiently and effectively. You are responsible for managing the accounts, for using proper accounting practices, consistent with uniform guidance, cost principles, and you are responsible for providing documentation for all the costs that are charged with grant funds. Costs must be allowable, allocable, and reasonable using the prudent person test. They also must be reasonable and necessary. So reporting your uses of the funds, that's going to be Form SF 425. This report will have a checkbox quarterly and for final report type. So if you receive multiple disbursements before you can receive your next round of funding, you will have to use the quarterly checkbox and provide all of your supporting documents. This includes receipts, any paid invoices, payroll reports, anything that you spent the grant funds on, you will have to provide a receipt of. So make sure that you are keeping very good records. Make sure you know where all of these are. A shoebox on the corner of a desk is probably not the best place to keep all this stuff. Make sure you have it in a secure location and can verify it. And you will have to keep those records for 3 years, the unemployment records for 4 years. After you use all of the grant funds, you have 15 days from that final expenditure to submit the closeout, that SF 425 final report, and all of the supporting documentation. So 15 days is not a large turnaround time, especially for busy business owners. So again, I stress the importance of keeping your documentation in a good, secure place. Make sure it is organized. Make sure you're using good accounting principles so that you are ready and able to submit this closeout reporting very quickly. Internal audits may come up. The SBA may decide to audit your account, and that could be looking at your application, looking at your eligibility, looking at the way that you've used your funds, and looking at your reporting. If you've received more than $750,000 in federal funds during a fiscal year, then you will be required to have an external audit. That $750,000 would include any government contracts. It would include any economic injury disaster loans that you've received. It will not include Paycheck Protection Program because those funds are coming initially from your local lender. But keep that in mind. If you are receiving a large sum, $750,000 or more, or if the combination of your EIDL and the SVOG gets to that point, you will be required to have an audit. So that is a very brief, quick rundown of everything from the webinar last week. Like I said, you can go back and watch that full webinar to see more details on everything, but I wanted to leave plenty of time for questions. And so now I'll let Sandra and Cody, I think they were monitoring the chat, so we'll answer as many questions as we can.
Thanks, Lance. So we have a question about production companies and how they are classified, asking if they would be classified as theatrical producers or theater producers.
So in the frequently asked questions, production companies are not included in this grant program. They are considered support services. They are services that, if the live venues are able to continue operation, they will receive their funds in way of contracts like they normally have. But unless you are doing the promotion of a concert or a live event, unless you are actually taking the tickets, promoting the ticket 60 days out, unless you meet those specific criteria, production companies are not eligible under this grant.
Okay, we've got another one regarding the budget. Question, do you deduct the PPP or will the SBA?
So that is a good question. We have not seen the final portal yet. So we do not know how that is going to be deducted in the application process. And I could speculate, but that wouldn't really provide any value. So right now, we just don't know a good answer, but we should know more. We will know as soon as the application portal opens.
Can you use the SVOG funds for past due mortgage payments?
Let's see. I think that depends on when they are incurred, and I'll let Cody or Sandra or somebody jump in if you have an answer faster than I do. But you are able to use it for payments. The period that you are able to use it for mortgage is from March 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2021. So if you have past due older than that, I would say no, definitely not. But if your past due payments fall within that period, I don't know for sure. It would seem to indicate that that is possible, but we need a little bit more clarification.
So we have another question. March to December 31st is not 1 year. With waiting on taxes to be completed, awarded grant funds could be midsummer or later. What happens then? Still just December. So I'm assuming they're possibly, Debbie is asking about the time frame.
So, okay, yes, the time frame that you can incur expenses and use these funds is from March 1st, 2020, so last year, through December 31st, 2021, this year. So you have a year and 9 months, essentially, that you can use these grant funds for eligible expenses.
We have a question that I'm sure many probably have on the document requirements. What should be included? Do they want every show date, ticket sales, or just a representative sample of those?
So that is a good question. There was mention of a sample for marketing materials, sample for certain other things in the webinar. They did not specify how many includes a good sample. So I would make as complete of a list as possible. If you are a talent representative, you do need to include everybody that you are representing. So not just a sample in that case. If you have full box office reports, go ahead and pull those full box office reports and have available. But we do not know how many a sample actually is at this point.
So another question, can the funds be used for production companies that are due from last year?
So that is another area that we don't necessarily have on, but it's like if it falls after March 1st, that it would be an eligible expense.
Lance, I would like to add that there on the FAQ under use of funds, there number 4 on page 17, it says, can grantees use SVOG funds to reimburse themselves for allowable expenses they already paid going back as far as March 1st, 2020? And the answer to that question is yes. The SBA believes this would be permissible under the Economic Aid Act. So that doesn't directly answer the question that was asked there about money that is owed, but that may provide a bit of clarification.
Thank you, Cody.
And Cody, I believe that helps answer another question that we've got here in the chat about lease payments that have already been made back from March 1st, 2020 through December, or in future payments being made December 31st, 2021. Can we apply those payments to expenditures on the SF 425?
Yes.
And then Lance, could you share the time frame again for paying? And I think this may go back to the past due mortgage, possibly.
Okay.
Oh,
So
no,
yes,
I'm sorry. It's for production companies, if I'm tying all this together correctly.
Okay. So yes, that date is March 1st of 2020 through December 31st of 2021. So if your expenses fall within that time frame, you can use SVOG funds to pay for them. And as Cody just mentioned in the frequently asked questions, you can reimburse yourself for those expenses and count those under the grant funds.
And I did throw the SBA frequently asked questions link in the chat there in case anybody wants to go through that yourself. It's quite extensive. So I encourage you to read up on that.
I've got another question coming in here on what would be considered worker protections.
So worker protections, that is like many things in the CARES funds and subsequent acts, that's personal protection equipment, any necessary changes to the venue, any necessary changes to maybe a box office ticket collection. So those are worker protections.
Those are all the questions I see in the chat right now. If you do have any questions, please feel free to throw those in there. If you don't want to share them with everybody, you can send it privately to Missouri SBDC MSU.
I'm sorry, I misspoke on the worker protections. Worker protection expenditures are payments, and I'm reading it straight out of the Federal Register right now. So I apologize for misspeaking. It's payments made to independent contractors reported on Form 1099, not to exceed 1099, or $100,000 in annual compensation. Ordinary necessary business expenditures, maintenance expenses, administrative costs. So it is still not well defined in here. It's, yeah, looking straight at the Federal Register, it just jumps right after. So I should not make the assumption that it's personal protection because it is not defined in the Federal Register.
So Lance, what about businesses who sell theater tickets? Are they eligible?
So if they make tickets available for purchase, if they are promoting shows, making tickets available for purchase 60 days out, they might be eligible as a promoter. But they still have to qualify under all of the other criteria.
And we have a question on here. Are travel agencies included in this particular program?
Travel agencies are likely not included in this program. unless 70% of your income comes from ticketed sales of live venue shows, live productions, you would not qualify under this program.
Okay, I don't see any other questions on here. There's a couple comments on, production companies and why they're being left out on that, why they don't qualify for this particular program.
Yeah, and that is something, unfortunately, I can't answer. It just was not written into the law as it passed through Congress, and we're not able to answer that. Okay, so I just got an additional question in. Is there a way to have SBDC look through the application before you submit? We are happy to look through with you. We may or may not have any additional information, but we are happy to look through the application with you. Absolutely. And you can, on our website, you could sign up for a time, go to the COVID-19 meeting link, and we are happy. It will schedule with either Cody, Sandra, or I, and we will be happy to help. All right. So if there's nothing else, thank you all for joining us. We will be sending out some follow-up information, but please go to the SBA website to read through everything, look through the longer presentation on SVOG. We are excited to help you in any way that we can, so please reach out with any questions. And I know we will stay on a couple extra minutes if anybody has some additional questions, but again, thank you all for attending. Cody, any final words?
No, I don't believe so. Just be on the lookout for that survey, and then we'll have it up on our website in a day or two. We encourage you to go there, watch this webinar, and the SAM registration will be a webinar everybody on here needs to watch if they are planning on applying for this. It will be very helpful and save you lots of headache, hopefully.